Have you forgotten who your master is? I'm the one that gave you your chance at freedom away from Malbolgia's cesspool. You'd never have podcasted with Simmons without me.
Welcome back to another episode of Spawnography. One of your hosts, Pierce Leiden, pronouns they, them, here with, as always,
George Marston, pronouns they, them, or she, her.
Two options.
Yes.
Love to see it. We're back with a couple more issues of Spawn. But before we get into them, George, how you been?
You know, not too bad. I've been doing some freelancing for a site run by a good friend of ours. I don't know when that stuff will be published compared to this, so I'll just say that I'm very thankful that a good friend was able to get me a little work, and I've been having a good time doing it. So that's been it's been nice to flex those muscles again. You know, the other thing is, let's see. I've been watching. You know what? I'll save that for my recommendation. That'll be my recommendation. I caught myself there, not pre-recommending something. But you know, other than that, I've been trying to get back into some art. My band, La Cigarette, coolbutrude.com, has our first show coming up about a month from now in June 12th. If you're in Athens, Georgia, you can come check us out and 4 other killer bands. So that's something we've been prepping for. A lot of practice, a lot of refining our set. It's about like 10 songs and maybe less than 30 minutes.
Hell yeah.
Best way to do it, baby. Yeah. Yeah. We're trying to keep it, short and sweet, lean and mean. Leave them wanting more.
That's the way to go.
I mean, we have about 15 songs, but we're only putting 10 in the set.
Well, yeah, because you can't give everything away.
No, you can't. Also, we're not going to play for 40 minutes.
Fair enough. Yeah, nobody wants that.
I legitimately don't. Anyway, what up with you, Pierce?
I finished up my hockey season. We made it to the championship, but we lost.
Well, you know what? You're still winners in my book. Because the other team cheated. Unless, is there a rule that says a dog can't play hockey?
There's not actually, but
shit. Yeah, I don't do it.
There's also not a rule that says a chimpanzee can't play hockey. You'll know that the Airbud series did not have a dog try to play hockey because that would be ridiculous. Instead, they had the most valuable.
Yeah, you need primate. 4 skates. How would he do? Yeah,
how would he do anything? I mean, I guess he theoretically hold the stick in his mouth.
But that's not believable. A dog playing basketball, you get that when you see it on the screen. You're like, oh, that's life. That's reflective of what we see every day. That speaks to something in us. Dog playing hockey, you'd be like, what the fuck is this garbage? Ape playing hockey, that's essentially just what we are.
Right.
Hockey apes.
That's essentially just what's already happening.
Exactly.
And,
I will say, would not give a chimp razor blades on its fucking feet.
That seems like a terrible idea. Yeah.
That's absolutely. That's like the start of Nope.
Yeah, 100%. But
great movie. Has one of the scariest scenes of any movie I've ever seen, which is when the fucking creature is digesting all the people and it's like inside. That's fucking gnarly. Let me tell you something. I don't want to get eaten to death by anything. Okay. If I'm dead, feed me to a shark. Okay?
That's fair.
But I don't want to be eaten alive by anything.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching. That's
it felt like you had enough. That's it. That's the only way you don't want to die.
I mean, I'm sure there's others, but that's one of the main ones. Like
one of the main ones for
by
me
animals
is wood chipper.
That's bad. Yeah, especially if you're still alive, like getting sucked into machinery. No, thank you. Yeah, no, that's one of the bad ones. That is, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say, not a preferable way to go from what I've been told. My dad, much like Tony Iommi, crushed his hand in a machine when I was a kid and didn't have to get any amputations. He was a drummer and had to recover. And I remember that for quite some time. But yeah, I would never want to do that. That would be a terrifying and bad thing to have.
As a kid, I was pretty certain that the escalator was going to eat me. And then that was further...
Mallrats, baby.
Right. I was going to say Mallrats further cemented that as like, yes, I was right to be afraid of that.
Yeah.
So,
I was okay. The other day, the new Mortal Kombat movie is in theaters, or it has been. Maybe it still is by the time this. Yeah, maybe it still is when this comes out. Who knows what release windows are? I'm planning to see it hopefully this coming week because I think it'll be fun. But because I'm kind of a person who just while I'm working or drawing or doing something like kind of with my hands, I'll often put on, especially when I'm working, I'll put on like a YouTube video that I don't really have to keep paying attention to, but that allows me to know time is passing. And I put on a compilation of every Mortal Kombat fatality ever.
Oh, hell yeah.
Pretty fun. But it made me realize no wonder there's a whole generation, like a whole segment of our generation that is just twisted into the weirdest fan fiction sex shit, because half of those are just people getting eaten by a big creature or inflated till they pop. Oh, my tummy. Or like just all kinds of stuff that's like, man, people are putting on fursuits to do that around the country. God bless furries. You know what? What's that?
Did you watch the Spawn fatalities?
No, I haven't, because yes, I did. I totally did. They showed that. Yes, I did.
You would have to.
Yes,
they exist.
I don't.
Ed Boon recently said that he wants Spawn back in Mortal Kombat.
Do a whole Spawn fighting game, though.
I mean,
just do the Spawn fighting game. Do it. Do
is
it.
The problem?
Do it.
Is the problem with that, like that a lot of the characters end up overlapping to such an extent that like there's not going to be big differences between, like, I don't know, some of the Spawn
I don't
variations.
Think so. I don't think so. I think they could totally do it because, like, okay, regular Spawn, he's got his chains, he's got his Hellfire, he's got his cape. Gunslinger Spawn, he's got the guns. Medieval Spawn has the sword and shield. You know, yeah. Well, they had exactly. He could take off his hat, and there's a bigger gun? There's his fucking fatality. That'd be sick. You got Cygor, who's like a big brawler. Or rather, Cygor would be super mobile. You know, he'd be jumping around. Overkill would be a big, slow brawler. Tremor would have, like, you know, you'd give him tremor powers, like you'd kick the ground and stuff. And I could just go on. You could do, it'd be so sick. Malbolgia as the like Shang Tsung character.
Simon Pure.
Memon as the sub boss. Oh yeah, Simon Pure, who will get. Was he mentioned last issue?
Yes, he was mentioned a couple issues ago because we talked about vampires.
In the recent, in the vampires. Yes, and we'll be talking more about vampires. Just because that's what's going on.
Would you put your favorite character in all of Spawn in the Spawn fighting game?
God, I wish. I'd love to. And we all know who that is. It is, and we'll say it on 3. 1, 2, 3. Wolfram.
Herbie.
Oh, I thank God every day that Wolfram is dead.
Every day you wake up and you double check and you thank God every day that Wolfram is dead.
Look, if Herbie's still alive, I'll just got to be glad that Wolfram is dead. No, my actual favorite character is, of course, Angela, and it would be, I mean, she's in Marvel Rivals, and that's pretty cool.
And is she? Oh, no, she's not in Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
No, that would be cool. But
I don't know
not.
why I thought that.
That was,
but
I
that would
think
be
that
cool.
predates it maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Probably.
I played a lot of Marvel Rivals when it first came out, but it just moves so fast that like there's 2 new characters. Like there's a new character every month or something. And it's
they
like,
did just
okay,
add Cyclops.
Cool. But also they added 30 guys before that. And every time I log in, it looks totally different. And I'm just like, man, this is so much to catch up on. But, Angela's there.
Speaking of Herbie, I was recently on our friend Chris's.
Herbie's in Marvel Rivals.
Is he?
Yeah. Not as a playable character, but yes.
Oh, he just appears. Does he also have like a? Does he also have a fat ass?
Well, you don't necessarily get to see it, but he probably does. A dumper bumper. That would be what you call it on a car-like person object. He kind of just looks like E.T. Which probably,
is on purpose.
Yeah, well, predating E.T. by a number of years. That
can't be true because E.T. was in the first Star Wars prequel, and that's set long ago in a galaxy far away. Right. So I don't know what you're talking about.
My bad. You know what, Pierce? You're right.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a mission where you have to escort the Fantastic Car to the Baxter Building, and he's driving the Fantastic Car.
Oh, that's cool. So he can drive. Does he need a license?
Well, I don't know. If he doesn't, he can't be an organ donor.
That's fair.
He's essentially a Waymo.
That's true.
Like, if you want to be real about it.
Wait, are you saying that he's controlled by like somebody in the Philippines?
Well, Pierce, people don't talk about the Fantastic Four's human rights violations, but we don't want to admit where the cobalt that powers their long-term batteries comes from. We don't want to talk about what it does to the people of the areas where it's mined. We don't want to talk about how they harvest negative zone particles and what that does to the atmosphere. They fly around in that Fantastic Car burning some kind of fuel. There's just, you never know. You never know with these people.
This feels like the Tucker Carlson bit. Like, what are we doing? What's going on?
It's really if the Fantastic Four existed in the world of the boys. There's only one episode of that left, and I am ready.
I'm very far behind on it.
Oh, that's great. It's funny. I don't know if we talked about this before. I've been watching it, but the creator did an interview where he was like, look, I wish we could have written this earlier before a lot of shit happened, because we kept putting in what we thought was the craziest stuff you could possibly think of, and it keeps actually happening. Every episode, my roommate and I who are watching it, we're just like face palming, like, how the fuck is it possible that Donald Trump is just Homelander who can't fly?
And who does piss himself?
Well, you gotta do what you gotta do when you're wearing a suit.
Speaking of Herbie and his rights, I was on our friend Chris's Play Comics podcast recently.
Oh, yes.
To speak about Ninja Turtles 3 Mutant Nightmare, which is based on like the 3rd or 4th season of TMNT 2003.
Yes.
Important question there was from Chris was, does Fugitoid have rights?
Yes, because Fugitoid represents the conscience or consciousness of a human scientist who used that body to prolong his life. Herbie's never been a person. Herbie's not a human being. Herbie is not organic life. There is a book.
Now I want to write Herbie Bicentennial Man.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want
that to be a what if, which is that Herbie decides he wants to be human.
Herbie lifetime.
We follow him for thousands of years as he slowly makes himself human. He will also look like Robin Williams.
That's done me so much. I don't even know what incredibly insightful and colorful thing I was going to say. That's what it was. There's an author named Patricia C. Reedy, and maybe I've mentioned this or recommended these books, but she has a series of young fantasy books, young adult fantasy as they call it, from the 80s and 90s, I think, called the Enchanted Forest Chronicles, and it is all about like this royal lineage of people and how they intersect with like dragons. And it's way before, it's nothing like Game of Thrones, way before that, nothing like that. One of the main characters in my favorite of the books, which I think is called Calling on Dragons, is the King of Dragons. And there's two things from that book, philosophical things that I took that I have always carried through my life and that I really enjoy. And I'm going to say them both right now. They're both come from the King of Dragons. First off, the King of Dragons is a female dragon. And the main character is like, aren't kings male? And the dragon explains, well, the first Dragon King was, but when, you know, female dragons also became king, we didn't need a different word. King means ruler. We just use king. It's not a different thing.
It's like 007.
Sure, yeah. And I just thought that was like, that always stuck with me, you know, like when I was in Enemy of the Pod, David Pepos' wedding as best man. I don't really identify as a man necessarily on any level, but I took it as a title in that same spirit of like, you know, it's a position, you know what I mean? It's an act, and it doesn't mean that I'm not who I am. But in that same vein, the other thing that the King of Dragons says is, I think it's the King of, either she says it or someone says it about her, is person doesn't mean human.
That's very important for Herbie.
No,
what I've been
that's
saying
not the point.
This entire time.
No, it doesn't apply.
Look, you're really painted yourself.
I see my own petard over there. I see it. But Herbie's he's a construct. He's not born. He's built, and there's nothing. He's not. No.
All right.
Look, if you build yourself a new body, who am I to say that's not exactly how you should live your life and how to be whole and complete as yourself?
Sort of a Ship of Theseus situation.
Sure. Well, in my opinion, that doesn't apply to people.
What about the Vision?
The Vision is a synthezoid. So he actually has a personality that, again, is based on that of a human being. His brain pattern and his thought process and his identity actually comes from Simon Williams, whose brain was downloaded by Ultron as part of a partnership with the Grim Reaper, in which Ultron was going to bring Simon back to life. Long story short, he essentially uses the what they call the, I believe, encephalogram of basically like the image of Wonder Man's brain, along with a spare body that was built as one of the first incarnations of Jim Hammond, the original Human Torch, to create the Vision. The Human Torch also has a human identity and feelings and awareness and sapience that Herbie simply doesn't have. Just like Data in Star Trek, Data is a unique and individual personalized being who legally was proven to have rights and sentience and to be his own living organism, or not even a living organism, but his own living thing with the same rights as a person. I'll tell you, you know what? I'll give you a compromise, Pierce. If they do a Federation tribunal and it's declared that Herbie is a sentient being in the same way that Data is, then I will concede all points.
Great. I will set that up and let's find out. Yeah. However, it's probably impossible though, because the Fantastic Four never crossed over with Star Trek. Only the X-Men did.
Well, you know, X-Men have done everything. Same as the Simpsons.
So we are not talking about these two issues of Spawn, but we are about to, because I don't want to rush through these. They're pretty crazy.
They're Bananarama.
This is almost the end of David Hines' run. Our next episode will just be one issue called The End. before Todd and old friend Brian Holguin take back over for a 12-part arc, 1 year of story that leads us into the next era of Spawn. But here, an era of Spawn is
let me
ending.
tell you. Yes, it is. And it's about to get, like, to quote the Bard, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Like,
Yeah.
This shit's crazy. And I had to reread it, which is rare for me, to be like, wait, what was everything that frickin' happened here? And boy, this is a juicy tomato. There's a lot going on, and it might be a little overripe, and I'm just fucking, I don't even know what I'm saying.
Great.
How about that?
On that note, I will hit you with those credits.
Yeah, hit me with those credits, Pierce. That'd be really nice. Thank you.
It's going to be Spawn number 182. Todd McFarlane Image Comics present Bad Blood. Story by David Hine and Todd McFarlane. Breakdowns by Greg Capullo. Pencils by Brian Haberlin. Inks by Brian Haberlin and Rodell Nora. Colors by Andy Troy. Lettering by Tom Warzikowski. Production by Francis Takanaga and Diana Sanson. Cover by Brian Haberlin and Andy Troy. It's a decently cool cover. All right, and it is dedicated to Raymond Briggs, who also got the dedication in issue 180. So I guess somebody really liked Raymond Briggs and gave him 2 issues of Spawn to dedicate.
How about
to
that?
him. Great. And when we last saw our heroes, we had Nyx, Wanda, Spawn, now Al Simmons separated
Cyan.
from his costume, and Cyan in a sort of void place after being
like
attacked by
it's the river. It's like the banks of the river Styx. Like the swampy banks of the river Styx, basically.
Yeah, and it was after they were attacked by Virkolakis, the ancient precursor of the vampire. The bite infects Al and kind of like awakens his suit to sort of be its own thing, even though it kind of already was its own thing.
Independently.
And we realized that it had made some deal with Mammon before, but we don't fully understand the extent of that.
That hasn't necessarily come up yet. That's where that's what'll be happening right as this issue starts, basically. It's kind of been hinted at. We know that Mammon has been manipulating everything in Al's life. One of the big things that we got into in last episode, and slight trigger warning for domestic violence here, we learned that Mammon essentially groomed Al into a person who would abuse his spouse, knowing what would happen with the level of violence that Al would be willing to dish out, as someone who was fully desensitized by a satanic manipulator to become an unconscionable, conscienceless killer.
Yeah, and it's to the point where Mammon says to him in that issue, like, did you do that or did I make you do that? And the fact also that this, I think when, I didn't really think about this read when we were covering it last episode, but my thought about how Al had sort of compartmentalized that away and been like, yeah, we can't have kids. That's not a thing. I just don't remember. I actually do think, like, if we're going to know Prize a little bit, it's that he is a good person and that the only way that he could, like, that was such a heinous thing that he had done that his brain almost just sort of erases it from his immediate memory and kind of like just doesn't let him dwell on it.
I think that's part of it, but I also think, I don't think we even necessarily have to know Prize it, because I believe Mammon says that he hid the memories from Al so that he would return for Wanda's sake. So, because I mean, if Al, maybe it's maybe a bit of both. Either way, Al is manipulated into that act. It doesn't excuse it. Manipulation isn't necessarily an excuse, but it explains
like
a little
manipulation,
bit.
Though.
Especially that, and we know that he essentially pruned his family tree to be specifically exactly what Mammon wanted him to be. In this case, to be the perfect host, supposedly, for the K7 Letha. The art here is really cool. It's very interesting. I get very strongly that Capullo did the layouts
it's
because
breakdowns. Yeah.
Yes, the breakdowns basically, because there is a lot of hand and mouth acting, a lot of great hand stuff and mouth stuff going on. There are these lingering close-ups, like this first opening page of like you get the middle of Nyx's body, her hand, and then the next panel is her mouth, and then straight up on her eye, as these vines are growing over her, which is the costume itself deciding to take her on as a host, basically. And it's essentially when the Venom symbiote springs free from Eddie Brock or whoever and finds a new host.
Same
in
idea.
This case, and in this case, it is a decidedly temporary one. I also want to say I love the colors in this. You look at this first page, you know what this looks like to me? This looks like really solid late 90s DC colors, where it was like, like the Gotham Central kind of era, that like when it was really clean and kind of subdued, but you got like all that texture in it. Look at that panel of her eye, and you can see like the veins creeping up around her iris, and it's just really interesting. And she kind of becomes sort of She-Spawn. She looks pretty cool to me. That's one of the main measures of a spawn is does the spawn look fucking cool? In this case, yes, she does. She almost looks like a goblin queen kind of thing in a way.
Totally Maddie Pryor kind of vibes.
Yeah, but obviously through the lens of Spawn. And she is fighting against Nyx is fighting against the costume. And she's saying, not like this. Wanda is begging Cyan to do something. Or anybody to do something. Wanda says she's suffocating. Cyan says, it's okay, Mom. She won't be staying long. She's not the one. And the suit says, perhaps you're right, but I still have time to kill you. And as she's about to strike in the suit, who should appear but Memon and two kind of vampires who I think have been seen as the servants of Morana. And he says, that's enough, Memon. This is my territory, and you'll get nothing unless I allow it. Or have you forgotten who your master is? And this is where he reveals that he also was directly responsible for the K7 Letha in particular, one of the most potent of the symbiotes, or also most manipulatable by Memon, was recommended to Malbolgia directly as the host. Or as the symbiote to bond with Al Simmons as host,
right?
Knowing that Simmons is part of this ageless bloodline, or not even ageless, but hundreds of years of bloodline manipulation.
Yeah.
And like,
this is kind of cool because we've seen like how we've seen the maker of the symbiote suits, or of the parasites, right? Like in previous issues. It's kind of interesting for them to have their own little sort of, I guess, hierarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the K7 Letha is more than just like a parasitic kind of symbiote. It is something that has wants and has like a little bit more personification here. And also that it's like pretty evil, I guess.
Well, it's interesting. We've talked before about how in the mythos of Spawn, both heaven and hell are 100% hierarchical. That is what they really are, is a structure of cosmic hierarchy that sort of goes in a sort of like inverse sort of funnel shape, almost like an hourglass in terms of power, like in polar opposites, where at one side of that, opposite spectrum, you have the hierarchical heaven, which is strict and abiding, and there is no movement in it unless the person above you drags you up by your chains. You know what I mean? And so in hell, though, there is also a hierarchy, but the hierarchy there is might makes right. It's who can you strangle with your chains? How can you drag yourself up that way? And it works for the same for everyone. We saw the Hell Spawn so many times. We've seen them clash, but way early on, we saw that Spawn wading through and battling through a sea of symbiotes and hellspawns. He battled the Billy Kincaid hellspawn. It's that same thing. It's like when some broods of animals are born, they wind up devouring each other to leave only the fittest fully nourished and fed to go on to the next thing. And hell, in a way, is that sort of natural kind of overgrowth of freedom. I don't know if you've ever read Dawn or are familiar with Dawn by Joseph Michael Linsner. I don't know much about him as a guy at this point, but there is, maybe still and has been for 30 years, a Dawn lookalike contest at Dragon Con. So Dawn in the 90s is a very popular character. She was kind of a bad girl, but she was like the innocent bad girl. And she was like an agent of a protector of Earth positioned between heaven and hell. Sort of like if Spawn was a lingerie catalog. But her hallmark in all of her incarnations through so many different variations and versions is that on one hand, she has chains wrapped around her hand to represent the confines of heaven. And on the other arm, she has thorns wrapped around her arm to represent the budding, painful overgrowth of hell, and how she represents something in the middle. It's not a super deep comic, as I recall. I have no idea about what that dude's like at this point.
One of the things that I like about what this K7 Letha kind of reveal is doing is that it does kind of call back in a really good way to what Alan Moore was doing with the sort of building the cosmology of hell as that kind of tower, as that thing that has multiple levels, as that like, okay, it's probably better to be a hellspawn than it is to be like, what was it, like the ice worms of whatever, you know what I mean? Like there's all these like different levels.
Be a no-name soul that gets devoured by one of the demons of hell, or tortured for eternity in a cage.
I think it actually works pretty well in tandem with that stuff. I think what's been interesting about Hines' entire run is that you can see the bits and pieces that he's kind of pulling together, and he doesn't always have to say, like here he's being very explicit about what's connected. He doesn't have to say that certain things are definitely connected, but you don't have to go very far to make those connections. And that makes the tapestry of the Spawn mythos feel a lot more, just a lot stronger and a lot richer. And I think that that's really good. It's a skill that I don't know that all writers definitely have. And I think it can also be hard when there are so many parts of the overall story that have been kind of vague or have been contradicted by themselves, right? The Chapel, Jessica Priest stuff specifically, we don't really touch that stuff as much anymore because like it got contradicted. It's kind of confusing. And then, we move on. Are we going to get back to Jessica Priest one day? Absolutely, we will. But, at this stage, it is sort of like it's a little bit radioactive. And so Hines been good about, like, I keep saying like dancing between the raindrops, but like, or dancing between the hellfire. I don't know. But, I think that that's absolutely true, that he's kind of carved out bits of continuity and, helped the book grow overall.
Absolutely. He's kind of, as you said, as we often say, tied off threads. He's added to that tapestry, Speaking of which, the art on these 2 pages, I really love. I love the symbiote, like kind of coming up out of this crazy, just growing inky puddle looming over Memon. And then I love the mirrored image, or sort of that continued motif in the next image where we get that glimpse of Malbolgia in the moment that Al became Spawn. And it's almost like, it has the addition of Memon standing there watching, and it almost feels like zooming out on that one panel. You know what I mean?
It's like you have the widescreen version versus the full screen version.
Right. And now you see that Memon was standing there the whole time. That's what a good retcon in a comic does, is it adds something. And of course, Malbolgia has many servants, many of whom have been shown to be involved in this process for eons. So it is not contradictory. It just adds something to show that Memon was playing the longest game possible, manipulating even Malbolgia. And I think part of the importance of the sort of image of the symbiote looming over Memon and then Malbolgia looming over Memon is that it doesn't matter if they're looming over him. He's at the bottom kind of lighting their path, whether they know it or not. And I also love the rendering of Malbolgia here. He looks more like Mephisto than ever, and he looks like the darkness from Legend. He's just like sitting back in this inky like pallor with his like glowing eyes. So cool. Love it so much. Meanwhile, Memon says, if you're looking for real power, you'll find it there, and points at the castle where we know Morana is. And so the symbiote in control of Nyx's body says, I'll go, but remember, I know what it feels like to be a god. Be careful what you're promising. I'll not be made a fool. And as she says that, she kind of burns the face of one of the vampire servants who sort of collapses in a heap. And Memon says, I've no intention of cheating you. As for you, Simmons, get dressed. You're all coming with me. Because Simmons is still just naked.
He's just been naked this whole time.
Yeah. So Wanda protests and says she's not taking Cyan, and Al says, we don't have a choice. I won't let anything happen to her or you. That panel right there is a classic Greg Capullo panel where we see the aftermath of the vampire's like burned, scarred face up in the foreground as they're like kind of talking in the background. Classic kind of Capullo layout. Yeah. Love that. You see his fingerprints on this, and honestly, gotta say, really enjoy his breakdowns and Haberlin's finishes. It just works really well together.
So
the whole
interesting.
Art team is doing great here.
So interesting to see him with a different finisher than Todd.
True. And also, I think Haberlin has the strength to continue showing his voice here, even with Capullo, because we know he already did the third layer of finishes on Capullo's work before, where he was coloring it for so long.
Yeah.
And again, he has a whole relationship with Spawn and the visual language of Spawn that he knows how to work with Capullo, because that's part of what has made him such a great Spawn artist.
Yeah.
Is that he's been collaborating for so long and he's got his own vision. So inside Morana she's got a whole room full of torture devices and weapons. Another great Greg Capullo panel where there are chains lining the room and there are like medieval weapons laying in the back. You can tell Greg Capullo drew those because they look more historical than Bud K, like decorative swords. Mm-hmm. You can tell that he like laid them out. But she's saying, "Are you ready, brothers and sisters?" That's just such a classic like Capullo layout. And it says they can't answer, and you see that it's all these people strung up by chains in the ceiling above her, and it says they can't answer because Morana has eaten their tongues. It explains that these are the children of the white light, basically people whose faith was renewed when Spawn remade the universe and the rapture came and all that stuff, who Morana has kind of taken advantage of and manipulated into being this cult for her.
Yeah, and they are much like many, like I guess they're likening it to many like Christian cults it is a
sacrificial death cult. There
Christian
are
youth
so
groups.
many Christian youth groups
where you save yourself for Jesus or whatever.
Whatever. Oh man, so yes, it is very like just showing her as a cult leader straight up, bringing these people to her like place in buses, taking them into the castle. She deprives them of everything. She teaches them this chant. They're chanting, because we believe that the Savior has a plan for our lives, we choose to make this choice. We commit to remaining sexually pure until our wedding day. We commit our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto our Lord and Savior. Exactly that, like, virginity pledge shit.
I'm pretty sure that I had to say that at church at least once.
I've never been an evangelical. I've been in that community I was in that community for many years. My dad and my stepmom, both very evangelical Christian, I assume to this day. And so I had a lot of exposure to it. And I don't think I would have ever said this, because I would have stood there and been insane. I would have stood there and been like, because I think at the point where I would have had the awareness of sexuality for this, you probably wouldn't have been able to convince me that, like, it was something I wasn't interested in. I had that, like, millennial, like, idea hammered into me of, like, if you have sex once, you will get pregnant with AIDS and die of heroin addiction or whatever, you know? Everybody does, especially because what I was going to say, I grew up in the South in, like, a heavily Southern Baptist area, Southern Baptist communities. So yes, I have seen and heard many virginity pledges, and I knew the, like, virginity kids in high school and stuff. And I was not one. Still am not a virginity kid, even though I am a Virgo.
So
snow. Oh yeah, but then it says she tore out each of their tongues after the pledge, and now they're strung up with chains.
But they were like, these panels are crazy because she, like, cuts off their tongues and slices their necks, and they're just bleeding everywhere.
She's got this huge, gnarly, like, barbarian sword with, like, horns and shit on it.
She's just she's in shadows as there's blood all over the walls, just dripping down the walls and stuff. It kind of rules.
This page where it's just, like, quick flashes of, like, her slashing at the bodies, then, like, the knife covered with blood, her eye, her teeth, her standing in the middle. Classic Capullo layouts. I particularly love the middle inset panel of the bottom row where it's her, as you said, fully in shadow with, like, the silhouettes of everything hanging around above her. And she's just bathing in their blood. We mentioned, they brought up Countess Bathory. Countess Bathory, if you like Venom. The band. Not the symbiote. Anyway, Memon is like, look at this. This is where every road you've ever taken was leading to. Surely you have something to say, or is the chance of finally learning the truth too much for you to comprehend? And Al is like, well, you can see in his face that he's just kind of like, yeah, fuck you, man. Like, I've had too many people tease me about this. And I love his response here. He is more determined as Al Simmons than he ever was as Spawn, which I think is real. I think that speaks to something. He has sort of a confidence back. He saw his own dick for once. I bet that really instilled something in him that, like, brought back a level of humanity. And he says, I just love his response. He says, yeah, that's it. We can't all be as brave as you. Mon laughs. He's like, a touch of sarcasm. So since you're in such a playful mood, let me enlighten you with a story. And we get this long, again, you can tell why Capullo is part of this, because this is a Capullo, like, recap spread by far.
Especially because Haberlin hasn't shown himself to not stick to fairly traditional paneling for the most part. With Todd kind of co-writing, it does feel like he's like, we need a little extra here, and I also think that
Well, yeah, and also it makes sense to go back to some of that original language, because we're really we're going all the way back to the origins of Spawn, the origins of Al Simmons, the origins of Wanda Blake, the origins of Cyan, the origins of Morana, which are about to be explained, because as we learned through this whole spread, as we already knew, Memon was an angel. He rebelled against God, but unlike, some of the others, he wasn't banished. He wound up in hell as a servant of hell. And through all those years, he's manipulated, again, the bloodlines and the family trees of both Wanda and Al to get to this point where they have this perfect synergy. so far there's been a tease around like who that is. We know it's not necessarily Al. We know it's not Nyx. We can tell it's not Cyan. You'd think it was Cyan the way they've kind of hinted that like, oh, Al always thought she was the child he should have had and stuff. And, you know, this is what we learn here. He says
Sorry, I was going to say, what's nice also about this whole thing before you get into it, we do, and across these issues, is we get a lot more editor's notes of like, see this issue, see this issue, see this issue.
Yes, that's something that isn't necessarily always there, and you are absolutely right. It has been. So once we get back to Al and Mammon, I love this image of Mammon hiding behind his staff with the skull like cast in shadow. That's so sick. He says, 2 bloodlines joined to create my perfect companion, the one who will rule the world. And Wanda says, that's crazy. You're talking like we had a child that never happened. And he says, no. And I like that it looks like it's coming from his skull staff. And Wanda says, no, I miscarried the baby. And Mammon, you kind of, here's where some of that, it's all really Mammon's manipulations.
Yeah.
All of this that happened, everything that makes Al Simmons such an unsympathetic person is bred into him from the moment before he was ever born by Mammon to get him to this point. And
I will say that the recap panel of what happened to the baby is crazy.
It's not good. It's one of my least favorite panels we've had in a long time.
It's so weird because it posits that Al says, I love you so much.
Well, here's the thing. That is supposed to be what happens. We finally get what is supposed to be the true moment. And you and I have conversed about this so many times. Is this Mammon's illusion? Is this Mammon's manipulation? What is happening here? And this finally actually answers it. I don't love that panel. Yeah. It's one of my least favorite because it makes it look silly.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing here finally through all the haze and all the lies is that Al wanted the baby and was in love with Wanda. And in this moment was loving her. And then it says he wanted your child. But that voice that he'd heard all his life, that dark whisper in his mind told him to act. And that to me says that was Mammon forcing that to happen.
100%. Which
was
as
Mammon
we've talked about before. I know that you were
physically and psychically forcing it.
Yeah, I know that you were somewhat distressed when all this first came up, as like if this happened, then it makes Al pretty tough to root for. But this, I think, fixes things on some level.
It gives Al it gives Al a light at the core of his soul that hasn't necessarily actually been extinguished.
Exactly.
It kind of brings back that little bit of humanity in him that we as the readers felt was lost in him. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of important in a metaphorical way. I don't love the frigidness of it because we've struggled throughout this with Wanda having agency and not having agency. And this, in a way, is kind of the peak of her having very little agency. She's really a spectator along for the ride with what happens to her and even her daughter, and let alone her ex-husband resurrected and everyone else in the world.
Yeah.
So, you know, we get this panel where Al is cradling Wanda in his arms and holding her stomach, and then suddenly he just punches her. And we know now pretty definitively, I think, at least to me it's definitive, that, and I don't think it's a no prize to say this, that was Mammon. That was not necessarily Al, not even in a way where he just was...
He didn't even have the idea from what we're told in the captioning, and
that's
to go
why
further,
he wouldn't necessarily know or remember when he dies. And we know Mammon manipulated his memories. It's just such a definitive moment, really, to show how everything that Mammon did led to Al being susceptible to him essentially possessing him, as we've seen him do with other people plenty of times, to do this one fateful dire, unforgivable act. Unforgivable even to Wanda, who, when confronted with her dead husband's face, still can't forgive him for this, and understandably so. But Wanda says that can't be. And he says, oh, but it can. He regretted it, of course, took you to the hospital, sat weeping. His guilt was so great that when he became Spawn, he blotted it from his mind. So did you. Again, more manipulation. He says, because you were sedated, you can't remember, and goes on to explain that she actually did give birth to the child who was living. And due to the magic of Memon, he stole her away, leaving no one the wiser that she ever actually had this child. And so, as we learn this, Wanda is pleading. She's saying, my God, please, what are you telling me? And Memon just straight up says that you have a child and I took it. All right, Jareth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it has a weird labyrinthy thing kind of happening.
He says, it's been 18 years since that unholy birth. Today the child comes of age. There, she awaits you there at the castle. Your daughter, Morana. Now, we learn that Morana, the fated vampire savior child, Vampire Savior, aka Darkstalkers, great game series. We learn that she, and there will come a child, as we saw way back with the cult of righteous vampires, who we can now kind of connect to the children of the light and all that stuff if we really want to. We learned that she is Alan Wanda's daughter, which makes some sense. Now, here's what I really don't like about this. Don't like about this scene. Don't like about how this is portrayed. And I think you will agree with me. I feel it's a little creepy that Memon is like, today she comes of age. She's finally 18. The fucking Olsen twins countdown has hit 0 hour. And then the reason that is hammered home. Now, that's not necessarily I'm not offended that a person turns 18 years old and that's the moment of adulthood where their fate snaps into place. That's a common storytelling thread. But what we see of Morana is she is dropping her robe to be fully nude and bathing in this blood, licking it from the sky, laying there, and we see her in the nude. We see parts of her nude body as she writhes in ecstasy in this blood. And I think it's kind of pretty fucking creepy. Maybe maybe in the way that culture drives men to be through, everything it's ever done and said about women or non-male genders. There is that undercurrent of finally 18, finally free.
Yeah.
I'm almost 43 years old. 18-year-olds look 13 to me. 13-year-olds look 9. The idea, I just don't like the connection of that thought to the sexualized nature of this.
It's voyeuristic in a way that's it's one, unnecessary, and two, I get that this is essentially a mature reader's book, right? But this is just, I don't know. That's not.
If she was 300 years old and tonight's the night she bathes in the blood nude, I wouldn't think about it. But it's that he's she's finally 18, and the first thing we see, it's like one of those hotel documentaries, as they're called sometimes, where the guy's show that camera ID to the camera. It's her 18th birthday, fucking disgusting.
The Girls Gone Wild thing. And
yes.
Barely legal, whatever.
Exactly that. That's exactly what I was.
Sucks.
Disgusting shit. Absolutely disgusting, exploitive, proven to be exploitive and harmful, legally proven, and with consequences. There is a voyeuristic aspect to that of saying she's finally 18. And I don't think that's necessarily what they're saying. She's finally 18. We can sexualize this character. But there is an undercurrent of she's finally 18. Now she can be involved immediately in these sort of erotic situations. And when we open up on issue 183, which, you know what, before we get into that, Pierce, hit me with those credits.
All right. Spawn number 183, Todd McFarlane Image Comics present Transformation, story by David Hine and Todd McFarlane, breakdowns by Greg Capullo, pencils by Brian Haberlin, inks by Brian Haberlin, colors by Andy Troy and Matt Mila, lettering by Tom Orzechowski, production by Francis Takanaga and Diana Sanson, cover by Brian Haberlin and Gerard Van Dyke. It is a very cool cover. It's Nyx in her like Spawn gear. It's different than she kind of looked before, but she looks very cool in her Spawn gear. So
I'm taking a look.
I'll allow it.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
It's pretty
That
sick.
really looks great. That looks that looks like a Starman cover to me from the 90s Starman. Excellent fucking comic.
Every time Gerard Van Dyke shows up to like pop in and do some stuff, we're just having a good time.
Good.
This one is dedicated to Clydeen Nee. Are you aware of Clydeen Nee?
No.
She was a comics colorist and the organizer of Artist Alley at San Diego Comic-Con. She recently passed.
Okay. Well, R.I.P.
The San Diego folks had this to say. They said, "It is with deep and profound sadness we announce the passing of Clydeen Nee, a member of the Comic-Con family and longtime volunteer. Clydeen was instrumental in overseeing Artist Alley. Her advocacy and promotion of independent artists resulted in thousands of friendships with those artists and anyone who knew her. We extend our heartfelt condolences to her sister Sarah, her brother John, and the rest of her family, and all those who were fortunate enough to call her friend." She ran San Diego Comic-Con's Artist Alley for years and years and years. She was a colorist at Wildstorm. And her brother was an early computer colorist for Wildstorm, John Nee.
Fuck yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, R.I.P. to a person who sounds like was a great presence in the industry behind the scenes. We have San Diego Comic-Con now. We all know Artist Alley is kind of relegated to like 10% of it or whatever. But that shit, it's Comic-Con. And it wouldn't be what it is if someone, Colleen Nee apparently, hadn't volunteered to bring in the creators and the artists and the writers and the people involved in making these books that make people want to come together to celebrate in the first place. They're the only reason anyone else is in that building, because it started with comics. Comics are foundational. If you love anything to do with film, TV, illustration, any kind of storytelling, read comics, be it something like Spawn or pick up one of the refined, like more highbrow comic titles, whatever you want it to be. Sure. If you are, I didn't get to write this, but I wanted to, before I was let go from my old job, obviously. I wanted to write
opinions
well, I don't know whose fucking opinions are not reflected at this point. Certainly retroactively not theirs at any point. Now and unto all time, my opinions do not reflect those of any employer I've ever had, especially not Games Radar, Future, or whatever.
Good to know.
Yeah, but what I wanted to write something about comics that you should read if you love film. Because I think there's something in the filmic nature of comics sometimes, not even like film adaptations, although I would have put Jack Kirby's 2001 on the list because 100%. It's fucking breathtaking. And if you're going to read a Jack Kirby, that's a good one for, again, a film person. But I just think there's something to learning about that type of sequential storytelling where we've talked at length about comic art is based around that one hot, heated, white hot moment of action, especially superhero or action or genre comic art. You want to capture, whether it's a facial expression or an action or a movement, whatever it may be, you want to capture that 1 second where it is at its most intense, visible, self-explanatory. And film is built around that. When you show something on film, you want to center or at least build your moment, your shot, your scene around that moment of impact, emotional impact, dynamic impact, whatever it may be. And I think being able to see that, even to understand how to say storyboard a film, which is a key component, so going on about that, yes, thank you so much to Colleen Nee for that. That's incredible work, especially as a volunteer. So opening up Spawn 183, we pick right up where we were. We get a top-down view of Morana bathing in the blood. Again, I love these layouts. I love the blood falling down, and you see her face reflected in the drop of blood.
Yeah, that's cool.
Again, it's very sexualized. What this really feels like to me is like some Anne Rice type vampire stuff.
Yeah,
and I think that's really what it's going for, especially that like Queen of the Damned with Aaliyah, because she kind of bears resemblance, not necessarily to Aaliyah. There is someone who her face really looks like. We get this shot of Morana. I can't put my finger on. Maybe it is Aaliyah.
Morana is I don't love the lettering choice by Orzechowski here.
I was about to say rare Orzechowski down point. Yeah, that is absolutely Aaliyah. Which of course this would have been the early or mid like what, 2007, 2008. Clearly they're clearly taking cues from that visually. And again, there is this sort of weird kind of innocence and experience element of Anne Rice's vampire fiction that's sort of about that, as to quote Stevie Nicks, that edge of 17 where you are eternally caught between some form of innocence, trapped in amber in this younger time in your life, forced into experience of this sort of darkness that can be very like cathartic and can be full of revelry for some, but is also just a horror for others. For Morana, it seems to be great. We get a lot of shots of her naked body, which, rendered just fine, but I don't love it. She confronts the vampires who are guarding her as she does this ritual, and she says, "Why do you stare? Did you not believe the blood of the virgins could make me human again?" I don't know, Peter Thiel. I don't know if I did. One of them starts to apologize, and she says, "Silence, fetch me fresh clothes, send someone to clean the chambers." Memon is taunting Alan Wanda. He's like, "Why the hesitation? Don't you want to meet your daughter?" And okay, there's this sort of narration throughout that is written almost in a diary or epistolary way. It's very kind of like scriptural, very gospel-y of like.
I think that's the other thing that's giving you the Anne Rice comparison, because it kind of feels like that.
It's very prosy. And so, it says, Wanda says, "Do we have a choice?" And Cyan says she's right. You don't have a choice. None of us do. Cyan has been tapped into these wheels of fate her whole life because, in a way, she is the child that Al wasn't supposed to have. Right. She's a child Al could never have had, simply because of who he is. And, she's been raised in this. Al merely adopted the darkness. She was born in it, molded by it. No one cared who she was until she picked up the pacifier.
That's very, you should hold on to that.
Off the dome. So they go in, and there's this narration. An eerie silence fell as they crossed the bridge. The only sound to be heard was the wind sighing in the chasm beneath them, like the breathing of a sleeping troll. Reads like the narration. Have you ever played the game Blasphemous or Blasphemous 2?
No.
Fucking rules. It is a side-scroller Metroidvania that's very recent. I think the second one just came out a couple of years ago, last year maybe even. It's awesome, but it's based on the like Black Plague in Spain, and so it's all this super creepy imagery. And if you ever play it, listeners, Pierce, anyone, I absolutely recommend using the Spanish audio track, because it is a Spanish-made game set in a mythical, like Spanish-inspired, like inspired by the Spanish Catholic Church. And it's so beautiful in Spanish, but also this is exactly what it's like. It's like walking over the bridges of hell. The game is about fighting God, rising up and fighting a God who actually disdains the world and punishes people for being human. Absolutely recommend to Spawn fans. That fucking rules, and the pixel art is great. Anyway, so they're going up there, and it says even Memon was taken aback when he gazed on his protege, Morana, for the first time. And right after it says that, we get this shot of her standing against a wall that it's almost like a coffin-shaped shadow. And again, she's fully nude. her,
her hair is kind of covering her chest.
The details covered by hair or shadow. But again, this actually doesn't feel quite as sexualized to me. She is portraying, it is a very erotic stance, but she's not writhing in ecstasy.
Yeah.
She is standing almost in a full unbridled majesty.
Yeah. And, Mammon is like, all right, well, what do you think? And, Wanda says she's beautiful. And now we get to see some of Mammon's manipulation the other way, maybe what he's been telling Morana. And she yells, oh, beautiful enough for you to want me now, so long after you threw me away like trash. And Wanda is already sort of apologizing just because she didn't know. She didn't know. And Morana's like, but you did know. And this is where it just kind of gets a little fuzzy.
Wanda
where
didn't do it on purpose. Wanda didn't terminate her own pregnancy. Al didn't even want to terminate the pregnancy. Mammon manipulated and controlled Al to do it because he wanted this. He wanted them to think that's what happened so he could take possession of Morana. Just want to circle back real quick to one thing about her standing here fully nude still. The last thing she said was, fetch me some fresh clothes.
Yeah.
And at no point is she in any way clothed through this entire sequence.
Yeah.
Where, she's confronting them and Wanda's apologizing. And this is also, you can tell that Mammon has manipulated her the same way he's manipulated everyone in this chain of events. He says, I want you to meet someone very special. And she says, Nyx, I know her. And Mammon says, as promised, she's brought you a birthday gift. And she takes the K7 Letha from Nyx and it encircles her own body. We get this cool symbiote transformation. And she says, you were right. I was destined to wear this just like my own skin. I feel the power. And we get this cool double page spread where she almost looks a little bit like Nyx did in it, a little more refined, a little bit like, oh God, who was the one that was wearing it a while back?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I forget her name now.
It doesn't matter. One of the other Hellspawn had a similar appearance. And she's kind of radiating this energy, just naturally taking to this, even in her human form. She doesn't turn into a Hellspawn. Nyx didn't either, but she is totally unchanged by this, aside from now having this power. And Mammon is like, look at her, Simmons. This is a true Hellspawn. No limits, no constraints. And it says, Morana unleashed her newfound power. And this is where the captions are very thin, red on black letters.
Rough. Almost Arkham Asylum levels of tough to read.
She starts tearing down the castle with her chains. Says she feels joy with the destruction. She says, no more waiting. It's time. Nyx is pleading, Mammon, what have you done for her? Or done to her? And she says, Morana says, we leave for Earth now. For the time has finally come for me to feed on the souls of the humans. And the foundation of the Earth shakes. And she sees Al and Wanda and basically says, what a fine meal you'll make. I've tasted the blood of thousands, but yours will be the sweetest. And they beg Nyx to do something, but she can't. Nyx says the costume drained her. She wasn't strong enough. But Cyan says, Granny wanted you to bring me here. She said, she kind of just stops abruptly. And Granny appears in this spiritual sort of force ghost form. And she tells Cyan she has to use her gift, use the shining to look farther forward into the future than ever. And we catch up with an old woman sitting in a study lined with books, writing in a journal. And she says, oh, it's you. And Cyan says, you know me? And the woman says, very much so. Let me have a look at you. So young, your life should be innocent, carefree, a pity you've had to see so much. And Cyan asks, you knew I was coming? And she says, yes, your grandmother told you to go as far as she could, didn't she? That means it's time for me to die. And Cyan is shocked. But the
Poor
woman says, "I've
Cyan,
lived a..."
literally everybody around her is like, oh, is dying or doesn't exist anymore or trying to kill her or her parents or
Yeah,
this kid's
there's
been through a
something.
lot.
She is like the Luke Skywalker, Wesley Crusher, like every
Of
poor
trauma.
kid. Exactly. Well, Wesley Crusher is the Wesley Crusher of trauma. Let me tell you two things about Star Trek. One is Wesley Crusher is the least relatable character in the entire world. And also, he has one really great episode. The great episode is where he actually has to go for a tribunal because his like elite star pilot training squad does an illegal maneuver that leads to one of their deaths and they try to cover it up. Actually, a great episode. The other, though, in the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation, which is easily the worst season of the show, they go to this hedonistic sex planet, and Wesley, who's like 15 years old at the time, is just like, "Oh, I don't want to frolic with these other people, hot people my age. I want to teach them how to play baseball." And then he gets sentenced to death for standing on the grass, and he won't just like fucking, just like, it's basically like, if you go fuck, you'll be free. And there, he's just like, "No, I just want to play baseball." And I was just like, he's like 15 or something at the time. And I just, again, I think if I was a 15-year-old and they were like, "You can't," I don't know how to tell you this, but you actually can't play baseball. You can't go on the grass. You kind of just have to frolic with other attractive people your age. I would just be like, "Great, see you, thanks, bye, pants off."
I think I would
Fucking
still be
like,
trying to play baseball. So I do relate to Wesley Crusher there.
I know, that's fair.
So.
Anyway, we get this moment where Cyan tries to look out the window and the lady says, "No, you don't want to see the future. Things are different now." And we get the sense that this is Cyan. This is
as
the
soon as
last
I read this,
moments
I
of
was like,
Cyan.
oh, I know what this is.
Yeah. And, you know, she says, "All you need to know is what happened after Morana took the costume and how to save your mother." Cyan says, "Why? Someone didn't save them? Not Nyx or Spawn?" She says to Cyan, "What happened can't be changed. I can only tell you now what you must do. Listen very carefully," and gives her instructions. Interestingly, did you ever watch Agatha All Along?
No.
Really good. I highly recommend it. Very good. It is way funnier and more interesting than most of the other Disney Plus shows. Catherine Hahn, fantastic. If you like her, she's wonderful.
I do love Catherine Hahn. Watched her other show.
Watch it then. If you like her, just watch it because it's her. It's just her being great through the whole thing. But anyway, has a scene like this where one of the characters travels to this strange place back in time, and there's this whole moment of like where she confronts her. Like it's just a really interesting timeline thing like this, and you can see again just how elemental some of these elements of fiction that Spawn is tackling here are, especially when you get into this metaphysical nature. That's one of the things that I think David Hein has kind of excelled at, is really taking that metaphysical stuff and making that kind of the center in a way that still feels true to what Spawn has always been.
Yeah.
So
if at this point Cyan is moving forward through time and meeting her old self, it doesn't matter that loop isn't like, that's the thing with time loops all the time, right? It's like, okay, well, is there
we
a time
don't know when that is or
right.
what could happen in between there. It's a Days of Future Past thing. You know what I mean? Kitty goes back in time. She doesn't necessarily know what's going to happen. It's a whole thing. It's actually, it's, you know, I think it works fine because we also aren't given that definitive answer.
Yeah.
We're only
you keep it vague.
left to wonder. And maybe they'll square this circle down the road somewhere. I know Cyan has her own thing going on as her own kind of hero. So, okay. Cyan shows back up in the castle after this like moment of like being far away. It says time has passed for her, but not for everyone else. And Morana is still lunging at Al and Wanda. And she says, "Stop. You can't kill them." And you can't kill them. And Memon is like, "How dare you tell me what I can do?" And she says, "You go to hell." I'm not afraid of you. There are others that know what you're planning, like the mother of miracles. And Memon taunts Cyan. She says, you've been deceived. She's vanquished. It'll be 10,000 years before her return. And then Cyan calls out to Al and says, Al, what's Memon forgotten? There has to be something. The one thing about Spawn that he can't control. And she says, Al says, the Legion. And she says, then call them, bring them back. And he says, they're gone. After the white light, they left. And she just says, damn it, call them now. Do it. I love really that at whatever she is, 12, 15 or something like that at this
12-ish, age.
Yeah, a young tween. Cyan is more self-assured than any of these people. She's just like, God damn it, just do it. Because every time someone has told her, look, just trust me and do this one thing and you'll get the answer and it'll be fine. She's like, okay, I'll do it. She has that determination.
Like, she's intrinsically trusting in a way. And it's partly, I think, her connection to Spawn through the pacifier and the shoelace, right? That like she kind of is just tapped into things on a different level, that when Granny Blake says, hey, there's more. Hey, there's this. Hey, do that. You're right. She just kind of goes along with it because she's like, I've already seen incredibly insane shit. And so when Al kind of pushes back, it's kind of funny because he's experienced even more insane shit and he still doesn't really buy it. Like he still doesn't really believe it. You know, I kind of like love Cyan getting to take control in this way.
She's a character that I've loved to watch grow.
She has all the agency that I wish Wanda had on some level.
And Al, and that's something I was going to say that leads directly into something I was going to say, which is, in a way, when you look at this, you feel like actually Cyan is kind of the child. She is kind of the actual chosen one in the sense that she has all the will that Memon built into Wanda's bloodline, and even that Wanda learned from Al Simmons in the moments where they were building each other up, with none of the dark hatred and willingness to do dark things that Memon instilled in Al. Instead, she's had guiding lights in her life. Even Al has been there for her to say, stand up against this darkness. I couldn't do it, and now I'm part of it, but you don't have to be what I am.
Right.
And so she, says, bring them back. And Memon says, finish them both, kill them. And Wanda says, Al, for God's sake, do what Cyan says, call them. And Morana taunts them and says, too late, mommy. And then it says one word. That was enough to rebirth the hordes living within him, enough to bring him back to his sanity. And we get my favorite word balloon ever in Spawn, where Al Simmons just leans back and goes, come.
How many?
And they all spew forth.
Yeah. How many? You think that was the first draft?
He jerked and twisted, it says.
You think that was the first draft?
I bet it was the last.
Yeah. I mean,
someone was like, either that or they were all just like, this will be so dramatic.
Yeah. I actually love.
He is in this room.
You want me to triple it?
Do whatever you want to do with it, bud. Make it sound like the voice of God telling the people who are listening what to do.
So I love this next page. We get this very Jay Lee esque panel of a Spawn costume kind of coming out of Al's chest, and we get to kind of meet all the Spawns that we've met before, right? Kamiko Kitamura and her grandfather, and we see Christopher again. And he's now got like a little army, which is like pretty cool.
Do you think this is an alternate timeline of Christopher from The Sopranos where he got whacked as a kid?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Morana is just like not impressed. She's like, "This is
there's less than a dozen left of the 6,000 that were there before they filled their destiny and fought in the apocalyptic war."
Right. And Christopher says, "Well, only the strongest of us have survived, and there may not be many of us left, but we're more than a match for you." And
I love the panel of her facing off against all of them. That is a very Immortal Iron Fist looking panel.
mm-hmm.
Like the inking is very David Aja. David Aja? How do you say it? I don't know.
I think it's Aja. But yeah, no, absolutely. There's a little like travel foreman in these pages too, I'd say.
Oh yeah, for sure. So Nick says, this is the vision you were talking about, isn't it? And Cyan says, well, not exactly, but I know how it ends. And I love this. Nick says, the Legion are going to kick Morana's ass. Right? And Cyan says, no, they're going to lose. And in a way, even more on some level than the actual apocalypse, this is almost feels like the Infinity Gauntlet moment where everybody loses at the end and you're like, oh shit. But there's that one timeline to use the MCU version where like, if you do everything right, even if it looks bad at the end, it'll be fine.
Yeah. It is funny. Her being like, they're going to kick their ass. Right. Like I was like, this is just like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 or something. Like,
I mean, I love those movies. I'll be honest. The problem with Guardians of the Galaxy a little bit is that no, for sure. I know that we've talked though about like the MCU joking the joke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think some of that comes from trying to replicate the like humor and dynamic of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, and Iron Man. It's all
absolutely Iron Man for sure. I guess, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy made it a little more smarmy. Not that one, not that movie, but the result of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I don't think you'd have as many. I don't think we'd wind up with like Captain America Brave New World where people are basically off screen going like the sound of crashing and then like, I farted. And like they're just kind of yelling jokes from off camera and shit. And it's,
yeah. I mean, where we kind of leave this, I mean, listen, I don't think Spawn is never undercutting itself by making the joke. It typically doesn't ever make the joke.
No.
It treats itself.
Well, and when it does, it's something simple like this.
Right. And I would say that this does not undercut the stakes necessarily because as a reader, you're still kind of, I don't know. I mean, it maybe undercuts the stakes of the fight you're about to see, however much that's going to look, or however long that's going to take. But you do have to wonder like, well, what is the plan here? And like, I'm a little bit confused. And, you know, I think that that's okay. I think that I mean, I'm getting into final thoughts a little bit here.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, I enjoy
because that's the end of the issue is Cyan saying, no, they're going to get their ass kicked.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that it's interesting to see how Mamon's been kind of manipulating everything. It's finally coming to a head. I don't know that I love Morana in the sense, or the concept of Morana in the sense that it's like, all right, great. So Mamon was manipulating everything for the ultimate Hellspawn, finally gets it. Maybe the meta thing in my head is going like, I feel like this doesn't really go anywhere, you know? And it also feels like it's a lot of backfilling things in order to create stakes that I wasn't necessarily feeling the whole way along. I've brought this up before, right? When you think about like great runs of comics and sort of huge payoffs for building mysteries, right? I always go back to the first year of Walt Simonson's Thor, the forging of the Twilight Sword happening at the back, like the final page of every issue, you know. But like that mounting, that thing, that happening in the background and then ending with like, okay, it is finally done. The Twilight Sword has been forged, like time to fuck up Asgard. And then we get a bunch of issues of Surtur trying to fuck up Asgard.
And this is the version of that took 170 issues to do.
Yeah, well, it didn't quite, because like Mammon,
not exactly. I mean, if you want to,
you know what I mean. But you know what I mean? Like Mammon hasn't been around quite that long, and it definitely
we finally circled around to that.
Yeah, like it feels like we're backfilling things. Like Hein was able to find where he can kind of retcon a few things and kind of tie them together. And like, I think that is, it's very skillful in the sense that like, I think that this is a pretty unwieldy continuity, and like typically, even though it is fairly simple and straightforward. But like, the things that have been thrown up by the wayside in favor of like more supernatural stuff, the further away we've gotten. Man, I miss Sam and Twitch. I miss the Night
I
People. I
do miss
miss
Sam and
having like
Twitch.
a human element. Hell, Terry's been totally sidelined now because we're just on the island of limbo, and like we're doing our this other thing entirely. And like I understand that these things will come back at some point, but I did think that that human element of Spawn was something that was pretty non-negotiable in terms of like telling a good Spawn story. Whether it's
Well, now
Al's
we have Al as the human element on some level, and we've got
yeah,
Wanda and Cyan. They're, again, though, like you said, they're not. Al doesn't have the same relationships with them, but we're at a point where Al doesn't really need a mirror in that way anymore because
true.
there's so
But
little for him to learn about himself, and he's not even Spawn anymore, so he doesn't have that side.
well, and now the things he's learning about himself are just like the reason that he was a shitty guy, and like I'd argue that it's not like, I guess like having his agency taken away also sort of takes some of the teeth out of some of the book. So I'm curious where we're gonna end. I mean, the next issue is literally called The End, and then we just get to kind of do a reassessment of David Hines' run in our next episode. But what were your final thoughts here?
I'll piggyback on some of the things you were saying. I think this is, if we're looking at Memon manipulating the K7 Letha and all that stuff as a great retcon and a great example of how you can weave that stuff back in, this to me is a less successful version of that, because I think this subplot and these issues exist because David Hine was like, well, I gotta make Al a somewhat good person again, or we're just not gonna root for him to do anything if he's the murderer of his own child. And Al is kind of having this moment now where like everything he's ever thought about himself has now been broken down, and he is almost at that final point of ego death, it seems like, where he's realized like, look, I am not the center of the universe, no matter what anyone is telling me. Yeah. I am a wave on the ocean as much as anyone else is, and even all of this, it was never even fucking about me. I was just a vehicle. Al was just a vehicle to reboot shit. He had the will to be able to make that choice, to be like, no, I will see the end of the world and I will outlive it. But I think there's this moment of catharsis here. You get it from Al. I think that moment, okay, I think they actually had a living baby and now that's the villain and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't think that's really the best. I think that's kind of stupid. I just think it's kind of stupid. I don't hate the way it's presented, I guess, but we talked about the problematic aspects of the specific storytelling. I just think it's a little too weird and a little too much like we're pulling away and away and away from Al Simmons as kind of the focal point of his own story.
Yeah.
But I think the reason Hein is doing that here is to give that light at the end of the tunnel for Al, like, you technically did this, but it was literally Memon moving your hand. And the baby didn't die. Memon stole it. So it's really Memon's fault that this child was not in Wanda and Al's life, regardless of whether Al had on his own, without manipulation or possession by Memon, if he had abused Wanda in that way with no outside influence and the child had survived, that would still be a different reality for them, a different story. And you would assume Al wouldn't be in their lives in that way, but the dynamic would be different. And that could have been the case all along. I mean, I know there's no way to do the time jump and that they did 5 years, whatever, and have Al be Cyan's father. But what if Cyan was fucking 5 years old at the start? They could have had it be Cyan. I don't know. This is one of those moments on some level, like, okay, I don't really like this movie, but a lot of people do, and I won't get into all the fucking reasons, whatever.
One battle after another.
No, not what I was going to bring up. Days of Future Past, the Days of Future Past movie.
I don't like it. I think it's bad.
Okay, me neither. And I think the reason it's bad is because it only exists because they were like, shit, we just rebooted this, but now we kind of want to deboot this. And now we have to take back so many movies of bullshit we've done and try to rework it and re-angle it. And it's just like, that's a really nice job bandaging something, but I don't know that we needed to open the wound.
Yeah. Kind of to jump off some of the things that you're saying, I think that the problem that I'm having a little bit as Heinz run winds down, and we'll get more into this next episode, is just that, like, if we're removing Al from the center of his story, then why did I read this for 180 issues? I think it makes it hard to just because right now it doesn't feel like there's enough time to give me a satisfying answer.
Well, I think it's almost like the Stephen King effect. You know what I mean? Where when he releases a book with 1,500 pages and the last 300 pages are telling you what's really happening and revealing the monster, those last 300 pages have a very difficult time living up to the 1,200 pages of anticipation before it.
Yeah.
And I think if we were more struck by what the outcome was, maybe we'd be like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't necessarily think it's not Al's story anymore. Oh, because that's what I was going to say also, is that whole journey Al took is summed up in that one moment where Mamon's like, what are you too afraid to finally get the answers? And I was just like, yeah, that's it. Sure. Great. Whatever the fuck you say. And it's just like, there is something in that, but there's still that conflict and still that sort of misunderstanding that we necessarily have by not understanding all the manipulation and all the terrible things that were done to Spawn and to Al. You know, it starts to feel like, well, how do we wrap this up in a way that everybody goes, whoa?
Yeah.
And do you even have to?
I think that you don't necessarily have to, but I do think that the misfire in this story is too much of Al being a passenger at this point in the story, right?
Yeah.
Cyan is driving a thing and Mammon is driving a thing, and Al is just kind of there. And you do kind of wish at the moment when he does the Legion thing, I kind of wish that I wish he just listened. You know, I wish that he didn't do the thing that he does constantly, which is
if he had just in turn trusted Cyan,
or if it was his idea on some level. If she was like, "No, Al, there is something you can do," and he was like, "You're right. Oh my God, I hate doing this because if I was going to write it, like you do like a little thing about how he's really, he is really the." Like Mammon's right. Like Mammon did help create him, but that Al Simmons is a combination of all of the people that he's met in his life that have been important to him. That he is part Granny Blake, and he is part Cyan at this point, and he is part Terry, and he is part Wanda, and unfortunately, he is part Mammon. But he's part of his brothers and his mom and his dad and his history and these people, these good people that came before him that, yeah, they didn't know they were manipulated, but he knows that because he has this long lineage of people who were good, who he can fight back. And then that tips him off to the Legion still being there. To him remembering Christopher. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing feels also more like a little more like that. I think the problem I'm having here is thematically, I don't know what I'm supposed to be getting out of this, except that the book is ending, sort of, you know?
Yeah, we're not getting that like big moment yet with Alan. Maybe we will. We'll find out. It's like this, as America's most actor always says, it's about family.
Yeah. I mean, that's all it kind of has to be.
Yeah.
But so, we're doing like we're kind of beating around the bush here.
I think it's meant to be the Spawn family reunion. Al finally getting to see what it would have been like with Wanda, but that's the impact of that is a little lost.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll find out how it ends next week. But for now, George, before we go, you have any recommendations for our listeners?
Yes, week? I was going to say this at the top, but I'll say I saved it. I've really been enjoying Netflix's Lord of the Flies adaptation. It's 4 episodes long. I've watched 3 of them because it's not really something that you want to binge. But it is stunning. It's gotten some mixed reviews, I guess, from fans and critics, but I think it is just so visually beautifully lush and desolate, and there's so much emotion in every second of it. You really get these underlying themes. Do you know the Lord of the Flies? Do you know the story, the book?
Yeah. There's like one fly to rule them all.
Right, one fly to find them, one whatever in the darkness behind them. Lord of the Flies, yes, is the horror sequel to Lord of the Rings. No, it's about a plane full of British schoolboys who are being evacuated from London during the Blitz in World War II, who wind up stranded with no adults on an island, and what that does to them. And I think as much as William Golding, who wrote it, kind of said his intent was to show what might actually happen if boys were left alone on an island. But I think that really it's about what would happen if men were left alone on an island. And it's about the promise and the tragedy of masculinity. And it is about the faces we put on when that is questioned or when we are questioning it ourselves. It's a really beautiful piece of work about very gay young schoolboys. And if anyone wants me to write a lot of words on it, you can pay me very easily to do so. Reach out.
Hell yeah. I will piggyback on your recommendation, no pun intended. Wah, wah. If you know, you know. I will recommend the album Volcano by Gatsby's American Dream. Seattle band, kind of indie rock band. Their first or second record was like based on George Orwell's Animal Farm. But Volcano has references to Lord of the Flies.
Definitely recommend that new Animal Farm movie. It is so funny and lighthearted, and the end is so joyful. Do you know about that? Andy Serkis directed the CGI fucking Animal Farm movie.
Is it a nightmare?
Paid for by Christian money, where they rewrite it to have a happy ending to encourage people to resist extremism. Dude, it's like a fucking disaster.
Incredible. Well, yeah, this record is, there's references to Jurassic Park, Lord of the Rings, Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Love Pee-wee.
The video game Fable, I don't know. A bunch of stuff.
Man. Really? Anyway. Fable 2. I bought an Xbox to play the original Fable. Used my entire paycheck from Hollywood Video when I was like 19 or something. And then Fable 2 is one of the games I played the most ever. I love that game.
Yeah. So anyway, cool little indie rock emo record from the mid 2000s. That is a band that I feel like is a little forgotten to time, but I don't know. I always thought they were cool, and I've been kind of revisiting them. So funny how our recommendations were kind of threaded together in a way. Anyway, if you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. We really appreciate it. You can find us on the internet at Spawnography or at SpawnographyPod. You can send us an email at spawnographypod@gmail.com and ask us questions. Tell us to stop arguing about Herbie. Let us know how you feel about Fugitoid's rights. And yeah, back at it again next week. We're going to only talk about one issue, but we'll talk about David Hines, kind of final thoughts on David Hines' run, and look ahead to the return of Todd McFarlane and Brian Holguin to the book. But before we go, George, for Todd to love the world,
he gave his only begotten Spawn.
See you later, Hellspawn.
Spawnography!
Spawnography is recorded in Athens, Georgia, and Queens, New York. It's produced by me, Pierce Lyden. Our theme music and logo were composed by George Marston. Episodes come out every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe. You can find us on social media at Spawnography or at SpawnographyPod. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at spawnographypod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, see you later, Hellspawn.